You're listening to the DFS On Deck podcast, brought to you by LineStar, the top-rated DFS tool set and #1 companion for DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo Daily Fantasy. Go LineStar Premium now at LineStarApp.com. Now, here are your hosts, fantasy baseball experts Joe Pisapia and Chris Meaney.
Welcome to another edition of the DFS On Deck podcast, brought to you by the LineStar App. Happy Tuesday. I'm Chris Meaney. Thanks for taking the time to hang out. We got an action-packed full slate here. Joe Pisapia is still away, being the best dad ever with his kids in Orlando Universal Studios. He'll be back later on in the week, but I got a great guest here today. You probably are already aware of Greg Landry. He is an MLB writer for LineStar, so he's checking in. Greg, happy Tuesday to you. Thanks for doing this. GP_Landry is your Twitter handle. That's where everybody can give you a follow. But Greg, we were talking off air. This is an interesting slate for you to come in and talk some top tier pitching today.
Feels strange starting off this show without the signature "Ayo" from Joey P. I kind of felt like I should try to pull it off, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So
I was in the same boat yesterday. I was like, should I go, "Hey yo"? Should I pretend that I'm Joe and just kind of see until somebody tunes in and is like, "Hey, Joe sounds a little weird today. He sounds like the crazy Canadian." Nonetheless,
he probably got that thing trademarked at this point, right? Like he has to.
He does. He really does. I've been doing some shows with Joe for a long time, and the "hey yo," I actually have to turn the levels down a little bit when I'm adjusting for him because he comes in hot. So we definitely we miss Joe Pisapia, but we're happy to have you today to talk some baseball, Greg. So let's get right into it. Not a lot to really talk about for last night. The Orioles got lit up again, Greg. I mean, it's been an ongoing thing for a couple of years now. Heading into last night, their starting pitching staff had allowed the most home runs. Their bullpen had allowed the most home runs. And, the ERA, just a whole team ERA was just off the charts. So the White Sox put up double-digit runs on them last night. Are you surprised?
No, not in the least. You look up and down that rotation, Bundy, Hess. I mean, these guys are like all in the top 10 in home runs allowed. They were last year too. Ryan Humphreys, the other baseball writer for LineStar, had Chicago as his favorite stack of the night. Like, no, not surprised in the least.
Yeah, very nice, Humphreys. Okay, so yesterday we had the postponed game between the two lefties in Detroit and Boston, Matthew Boyd and Chris Sale. Yeah, you're not going to be able to play that on any slate. It's going to happen in the afternoon. So, I mean, if you want a piece of it, you can maybe do some betting. But I just want to get your take maybe on Chris Sale. Like, how concerned are you? The velocity seemed to be back up. Yesterday he was a great value, a great discount. I mean, I was looking on the board and there was like 6 or 7 pitchers more expensive than Chris Sale. I mean, I'm sure his ownership, Greg, would have been about 40-45%. But what do you expect from him, in his next couple starts? How concerned are you?
So I feel like this is kind of the do or die because it's against Detroit, and Detroit obviously has a pretty watered down lineup from major league standpoint. I kind of felt like it was like that against Toronto, and then he got lit up against Toronto. So everyone here in Boston, I live just outside of Boston, is sort of waiting for when is he going to figure it out. I mean, it's still early, and it's not like he's the only pitcher that's been having trouble. I mean, it seems like all the top tier pitchers right now. I mean, we were talking about this before we started the show, but like Cole got lit up over the weekend. Scherzer got lit up in Miami over the weekend. Like, it's not like Sale is the only one having trouble. But, starting to get to that point where it's a little bit do or die. The Red Sox are coming off the sweep of Tampa Bay, which was a good step in the right direction. And they're obviously going to need Sale if they're going to make a push this year. So it'll be interesting. Detroit is not a scary lineup. So if he gets lit up by Detroit, then yeah, I'm nervous.
Yeah, and being in Toronto, that was the feel as well. Like, if the Jays get to Chris Sale earlier in the year, and they did, then he's in trouble. So we'll wait. You're dead on there. There's been a lot of slow starts from some big name pitchers. So we'll bypass that game, but we are keeping an eye on Chris Sale in terms of velocity and just trying to take advantage of that Tigers lineup. So let's get right into it. 6:10 Eastern is really the first game. You're going to have to get into a little bit of a slate. FanDuel, of course, you can get these games in. We have Miami at Cleveland. Carlos Carrasco on the hill. He's 10-4 on DK. Pablo Lopez pitching for the Marlins, 6-7. Obviously, one of the lowest team implied totals here, 3.2 for Miami. Carlos Carrasco's been kind of all over the place. He's coming off a really good start, though. 4.9 is the team applied total for Cleveland. Do you have any interest in guys like Jose Ramirez, Carlos Gonzalez? Francisco Lindor is obviously back and he's priced accordingly. If I look over on FanDuel, Greg, I see Jose Ramirez at 3,000. I mean, it seems like it's only a matter of time before he has like a monster game. I feel like if you're playing on FanDuel, you probably just take that shot in the discount and just hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, Pablo Lopez, I think is got a bright future. I'm not quite buying him yet, and it's the Cleveland lineup looks a lot different now that they've got Lindor in there. So that really top four, Lindor, Ramirez, Kipnis, I'm not really too afraid of, but Lindor, Ramirez, and then Carlos Santana. I mean, that's a pretty tough first four there. So obviously Vegas likes him with the 4.9 implied total. So I definitely have interest in the Indians lineup.
Yeah, you're right about Pablo. I agree. There is some upside with him. I mean, he's striking guys out, right? I mean, he's right now a double-digit K per nine, limiting the walks, and has kind of been unlucky, really, to start the season. The xFIP much lower than the ERA. Someone to keep an eye on. Cleveland has been striking out, but the lineup is much better. I mean, you get Cargo in there, the return of Lindor. So maybe not a play for Lopez, even though he is pretty cheap. Let's move over to Cincinnati and Atlanta. We have Kevin Gausman, been really good since he was acquired from the Braves last year, been better at home. This one is in Cincinnati. It's not a great pitcher's ballpark. Sonny Gray on the hill hasn't been awful yet to get a win as a Red. What's your take here on this game?
I like the Braves. I'm not a big fan of playing pitchers in the Great American Small Park. So
don't blame you.
Yeah, and the Reds have been a little bit better at home. Gausman's been okay. I guess you could make an argument for the Reds, but I've been all over the Braves since the beginning of the season, and so far it's worked out fairly well. So I'm not going to stop here.
Yeah, I don't blame you there at all. We should see Albies in the lineup, projected to be the leadoff guy. Sometimes against the lefty, he gets in that leadoff spot and he's bumped down the lineup a little bit. But I always find, in the middle of that Braves lineup, you get, Acuna is priced appropriately, but Josh Donaldson 3.7 in the 2 spot, Nick Markakis 3.6, and Dansby Swanson's had a pretty good season so far too, Greg, and he's 3.3. Any interest there? Maybe a little bit of a value bat against Gray?
The price differences on these guys between the two main sites is crazy.
It's wild,
right?
Isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, because Dansby's 4.7 on DK, and I'm looking at it like I don't know if I want to pay that.
Yeah, a bit of a pass.
But on FanDuel, it's like these guys are free. So yeah, this is probably a better play on FanDuel versus DraftKings.
Okay, let's move over to Pittsburgh. We have Trevor Williams on the hill. He's 8.3 on DraftKings. He's $8,000 on FanDuel at home, taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Luke Weaver, and we talked off air as well. This is almost like a comeback slate. We'll get into a couple other guys who are trending up, and a little bit of a surprise, at least for me, at this point of the season, that they've had this kind of success. Luke Weaver is one of them. This is somebody I was in on last year as a decent strikeout guy, keeps the ball on the ground, and then all of a sudden he was allowing home runs. He was struggling with the command. This is going to be one of the lowest totals on the board, maybe not a lot of runs. I think I said that, Greg, actually, to Neil Parker on Monday, and we saw Arizona put up double-digit runs against the Pirates. Any feel here? Would you go to Luke Weaver against the Pirates? Because they did get Gregory Polanco back into the lineup, but overall, they just haven't been that strong of an offense.
So my take on Weaver, it's like if you look at last year's numbers, it's not pretty, and then you look at this year's number, it's like literally the tale of two different people. And it's interesting because he's had some tough matchups too. He's faced Atlanta, he's faced the Red Sox, he's faced the Dodgers, and the Sierra is slightly below the ERA, 3.32. He's got 53% ground balls. He's got really good strikeouts right now, 27.3 strikeout rate. Like everything lines up like this is for real, even though it's a small sample. I think for me, it's going to be what is the rest of the field do? Because if Luke Weaver is suddenly chalky tomorrow because there's not a lot of like real standout pitchers on this slate, then I'm probably not going to go with him. But if he's flying under the radar, then I think he could make sense. The Pirates aren't really a scary lineup.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it could be a sneaky little play. I mean, PNC Park, we know, is a nice pitcher's ballpark. And for Luke Weaver, he had some great numbers there. And just the Pirates overall, I mean, just in terms of offense, not generating a lot. I mean, they're 27th in WOBA, not striking out a ton. But still, you mentioned Weaver. I mean, he has been just really good over his last couple starts. And I really noticed against Atlanta, anytime that you can go into Atlanta and shut out that offense, I mean, only 4 hits allowed, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts, and then 8 strikeouts the outing before. And, kind of held his own against the Red Sox as well in start number 3. So I think it's very interesting there. Gregory Polanco, as I mentioned, back into the lineup. I'm not sure if he'll play back-to-back days. It may be a little bit easy on him, but, again, he jumps on DraftKings. He's $4,500. You're like, whoa. And then on FanDuel, you see he checks in at under $3,000. So again, the pricing is a little bit tighter over on FanDuel. And here we go. Let's get into the Baltimore Orioles. We talked about them off the top. They've really struggled this season. Andrew Cashner, maybe their most consistent pitcher. And we know that he's really not that great. The White Sox were a great stack, of course, on Monday. They come in with a 5.3 team implied total. We mentioned Yohan Moncada, Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson. We even gave a shout out to Yonder Alonso as just maybe that middle stack is could have some success. Moncada didn't pan out, but Abreu was really, really good. And you know what, Greg? I think I would just go back to him again. I don't want to beat a drum here, but on FanDuel, he's $2,800.
Yeah. All the bats in this game, and I mean they're fairly well priced on DraftKings too. I actually like the Baltimore side of this game. Nova is pretty well known for struggling against lefties, and there's some decent lefties. You got like Dwight Smith, you got Jonathan VR, Rio Ruiz. If Chris Davis could, make contact with something, it's probably going to go yard in this park against Ian Nova. So, and with Nova's low strikeout rate against left-handed hitters, this is probably as good as a chance as Davis is ever going to get. So, I like all the bats in this one.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Nova checks in with an 82% contact rate for his career. This is the first time since 2013 it's been under 80, and it's only at 79%, guys. So the contact is definitely going to come for some of those guys. So it's another good call by you, Chris Davis. A little bit more expensive than what he was. He's not $500 anymore on FanDuel, but he's $2,100 still. A definite discount in DFS. Let's go to Toronto. Been conflicting reports. I'm up here. I'm not a Jays fan. I was an Expos guy, so I was huge Vladimir Guerrero guy. So I'm just waiting for Vlad Guerrero Jr. to get called up. There's some reports this would be the game Tuesday. I'm like, oh, wicked, Jeff Samardzija. Then there's some reports on Friday. He would have to go up against Mike Fiers, another just fly ball pitcher, gives up a lot of home runs. What's your early take on Trent Thornton? I know Joe likes him a lot as a strikeout guy. The Giants, again, much like the Pirates, don't really have a threat in that offense. Buster Posey just doesn't seem like the same guy anymore.
No, I agree. Thornton's one of the guys that's high on my list for this slate, which tells you a lot about what's available really on this slate. But this is a guy who was, had a 23.6% strikeout rate and a 393 xFIP in AAA last year. He was in the Houston organization, which I don't know about you, but anybody that comes up through the Houston organization usually grabs my attention because they're pretty good at finding guys and building a good farm system. Before he ended up in Toronto, the strikeout upside is definitely there. For me, it's the last couple starts have been a little bit rough. He gave up 3 home runs and 5 earned runs against the Rays. So it's risky, but the Giants are about as good as a matchup as you can get. So I think Thornton definitely has some upside, especially in tournaments.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think Thornton is a strong play, and also just an opportunity there potentially for a win. I know it's hard to predict wins, but he's had some pretty good showing so far this year, and this will be one of the easier matchups he's had. And on the other side, Jeff Samardzija, we've kind of picked on him a lot, over the course of this show, the first few weeks. I mean, he's already allowed a couple home runs. He allowed 6 in just over 40 innings last year. The year before, in 2017, he allowed 30 bombs, and a lot of his home runs have come on the road. I believe like 60 the last 80 roughly. Don't quote me on that, guys, but pretty sure it's right in around that mark. Have been on the road. So Rogers Center, we know the balls can fly out of there. So if you're looking for some power, some guys to take a shot on, I think Gerchik is one. Justin Smoke has been kind of disappointing. I'm surprised to see his price on DK so expensive, and even around FanDuel, he's not much of a discount. But Teoscar Hernandez checks in at a reasonable price as well. Let's move over to the Boston. This will be the double header game. You'll have to keep an eye on it. Who starts in the early game. You may not see guys like Andrew Benintendi, Mookie Betts play both games. JD Martinez could probably go for both games, but we may see a couple guys rest in and out there. We should see Steve Pearce in the early game against a lefty, and we'll get Mitch Moreland in on the against the righty, and Spencer Turnbull, who's on the hill. I like Turnbull. I don't like him against the Red Sox, Greg. I'm not going to get that crazy.
No, you couldn't have said it any better. His surface numbers have been fairly solid. He has strikeout upside. He's kind of like Thornton. He's got a decent SIERA. He's got 26.7% strikeouts. But he hasn't faced great competition so far. He faced the Jays when they were in that crazy streak at the beginning of the year where they almost got no hit like every game.
Yeah.
And then he faced the Royals, the Indians, and the Pirates. And the last 3 of his last starts have been at home, and now he's going on the road at Fenway. Like, this just isn't the spot to try him out.
No, not at all. I'm going to like the Red Sox. I mean, they're going to be heavy favorites in those 2 games, but you can take them by a couple runs and increase your odds. I think it's a good bet at home. And, they got that win against Tampa, that sweep, rather. And, that might be the start of their turnaround. Let's move over to the Mets and the Phillies. Again, Zach Wheeler this will be the second straight start for him against Philadelphia. It's been a rough go for him, guys. 21 hits allowed in 22.2 innings. He does have 22 strikeouts, but he's walked 14. He's given up some hard contact. He's given up 3 bombs already. He's faced some tough competition, Greg. Started off the season back-to-back starts against the Nationals, then went into Atlanta and faced the Braves, and then in Philly, and now he's home to the Phillies. I think 7-9, like, it's nice to see his price drop down, but I don't know, man. I just don't have that confidence in him against this Philly squad, but he does have an upside to win you a GPP in a tournament, and he could come with a low ownership.
Yeah, I want to, especially on this slate where, like, again, nobody's really standing out, but he's got a 5.10 SIERA. The strikeouts are down. The walks are up. He's got a 1.54 whip. He just faced the Phillies in his last start like a week ago. It's actually less than a week ago.
And they let him up.
Yeah. They're making it tempting with the price. And, I think as I'm building my lineups, if he's like the last guy in my lineup and it just makes everything else fit, then fine. But I'm not going out of my way to roster him.
No, I don't think I could either. There's some other pitchers here that are in better spots. Maikel Franco, he jumped up to the 4 spot in the lineup, which was nice to see. Gene Segura is supposedly back this weekend on the IL with a hamstring injury. So there's some guys moving around a little bit in the Phillies lineup. JT Realmuto remains a nice little value play over on the FanDuel side.
I actually like the Mets side of this one.
Okay, Zach Eflin. I'm not buying in.
No, and he's pretty well known for struggling against lefties in particular, and the Mets have some pretty solid lefties. Nimmo, and if Canó gets back in, I know he was out today after he got hit on the hand and he had a soft cast, I believe. So we'll see what happens there. But he's been super cheap. Conforto, McNeil, like I really like the lefties in particular on the Mets side, and I think this one will go under the radar. So. The only thing that stinks about it is it's in New York, which isn't the greatest hitters park. But Eflin's he's got a 205 home run per 9 this season. He gave up 3 home runs against the Marlins in Miami a couple of starts ago. I definitely like the Mets side.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were really freaking out of that first start in Washington where he had 9K. A good start for him, but again, myself, I'm not really buying into him. I like the fact that he does have some starts where he keeps the ball on the ground, but overall, there's some potential for some home runs. So 16 home runs allowed for him in just under 130 innings. So yeah, keep an eye on Robinson Cano. He seems to be a value for us every week, Greg. Joe and I are always talking about Cano. I know he's not the same hitter anymore, but he always checks in at a decent price, and the Mets stack we've noticed has been low owned. It's just been very underrated. So we kind of skipped over that 4.3 team implied total. So a nice catch there by you. Let's go over to another guy that a lot of people are excited about. I'm seeing a lot of buzz in waiver wire leagues, deep leagues on the waiver wire about Homer Bailey, 6'2", taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Now I think Stanek is going to start for the Rays. Not 100% sure. We don't have a guy just in there yet, but it's most likely going to be somebody who checks in and has an inning or two. But I'll get your thoughts on Homer Bailey before I give mine. And he has had some positive showings and some positive signs already to start the season, which is surprising to me.
I just can't do it. It's Homer Bailey. Like, I can't do it. Like, everything says that I should. Like, 357 SIERA, 29.4% strikeouts, 1.09 whip this season. I mean, you got to take it with a little bit with a grain of salt. His last 2 starts were against a very banged up Yankees team, and then Cleveland, who before they got Lindor back, he got smoked by Seattle earlier in the season. Granted, everybody's been getting smoked by Seattle. And now he's up against Tampa. Tampa's got a 342, WOBA and a 212 ISO against right-handed pitching. I don't know. I just don't think I can pull the trigger on Homer Bailey. It is a good pitcher's park. This game is in Tampa, so I'm not going to fault you if you want to take a shot, but
I'm not doing it, man. I was waiting. I was waiting it out to see if you talk yourself into it. I can't do it either. And you brought up some good points with him, and the Rays they are striking out. The offense is not that bad. It's underrated. Like, I think there's some guys in there that, like Choi, Diaz, Tommy Pham, obviously. Avisel Garcia has had some pop in his bat. Mike Zunino, if he gets back in the lineup, I know he hit a home run yesterday. He's been awful, but he did hit a home run yesterday. He's got some pop as well. But I just can't get into Homer Bailey. I understand with the strikeouts. I think you brought up the best point of all is he faced 2 watered down lineups.
Yeah,
he took advantage of them. I mean, even still, a 38% fly ball rate. It's been the home runs that have really gotten him over the past couple of years. And, we always joke about his name is Homer, but 43% hard hit rate so far this year, 40% last year. And if I'm looking at just contact rates and swinging strike percentage, I see 75% contact rate right now. Only twice in his career, he's been below 80. And that was all the way back in 2014. And the 2013 and 2014 seasons, the only 2 years he had a double-digit swinging strike percentage. It's at 11.5 right now. I think he's just taking advantage of some soft opponents. So I'm not buying in at all. So will you attack him? Will you try to get some Rays in there and try to get some power bats?
Yeah, especially if he starts gaining buzz tomorrow, like out on Twitter or out on the LineStar chat or wherever. But if it seems like he's popular, I mean, he is cheap. I'll give him that. So if he's going to turn into people's favorite SP2, like on DraftKings, then yeah, I'll have some stacks out there against him for sure. I mean, someone like that, he's super volatile. So if he gains any kind of popularity, it's kind of like the Luke Weaver situation. I'm going to want the other side of it.
Yeah, and the LineStar chat, by the way, guys, is super active and very awesome. If you haven't been able to check out the app, it's Joe and I just love it. I mean, there's so many cool tools, the values, projections. You can obviously switch over to whatever site you play. You can get yourself just a really good lineup by looking at some of the values and some of the projections that come across. So the chat is active. Keep an eye on the chat for us, of course, because Homer Bailey, and I know a lot of people are going to be talking about him. Move over, Zach Davies taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. The team implied total of 4 right now for Milwaukee. That's got to be one of the lowest, but we didn't have a starting pitcher, up until just recently, and it's Ponce de Leon. Do you have a feel on him? He hasn't pitched yet this season. He doesn't have, obviously, a lengthy resume in the majors. Struggling with some walks, not striking a lot of guys out in AAA, and obviously it's tough for him, man. He's got to face one of the best lineups in baseball.
Yeah, 33 innings in the majors last year. 4.18 SIERA, not terrible, but nothing great. He's kind of priced up. I was surprised considering he's 8K on DraftKings, and this is going to be his first start of the year.
And only his 5th of his career.
Yeah, I was a little bit taken aback by that price for sure. He's been awful so far in AAA this year. He's I shouldn't say awful. He's 2-0, which is good. He's got a 3.24 ERA, which is good, but it's a 6.06 xFIP. So regression is coming hard. He's got a 144 WHIP, and he's only striking out 17.8% of batters in AAA. So what's that going to look like with major league competition? Like, he may not strike out anybody at all. So no, I don't have any interest in De Leon. I think the Brewers side of this looks pretty good right now.
Yeah, and for De Leon, and my thing is, I mean, when you're walking guys like 4.03 walks per nine, 4.67, that was 2017 AAA, 2018 AAA. When you're walking guys in the minor leagues, I mean, you're going to have some issues, in the bigs with command. I mean, the only walking in the minors are guys like really just going to the bus. Let's be honest. So it may be a tough start for him. I'll go back to some of these Milwaukee bats that are struggling. Travis Shaw, Jesus Aguilar has been in and out of the lineup. He's just been so awful, but maybe this is an opportunity for him to jump on, just a pitcher that doesn't have a strong track record and somebody who's given up a lot of home runs in the minor leagues, had a high fly ball rate. So there could be an opportunity there to get some guys with a lower ownership. Mike Moustakas is out of the lineup Monday, so keep an eye on him for tonight. the Cubs and the Dodgers. We have Kenta Maeda. He's $10,000 on DraftKings. Unbelievable. One of the biggest shocks to me, I think, of the night. On FanDuel, he's 8-7. Jose Quintana has been really good this season. He has had one bad start against the Brewers. We just talked about their offense and what they can do to you, but he's had some pretty strong starts. But, just looking at the numbers overall, Greg, the Dodgers they're a strong team against lefties. I mean, we have Kike Hernandez, small sample size, mind you, but a 620 WOBA, 500 average against lefties. AJ Pollock has been a value bat inside that Dodgers lineup. DK, he's $3,600, a 480 WOBA, 368 average so far against lefties. I know he's struggled overall, but this seems like a pretty good spot for him. And for Kike, a 61.5 hard hit rate so far. Are you going to try to stack some of these expensive Dodgers bats, or are you going to buy into Quintana? What's your feeling on this game?
I can't pay these prices for Maeda and Quintana. Like Quintana is another one of those guys on the list of are we really buying it or not, along with Weaver and Homer Bailey. Like, I mean, the numbers this season have been lights out. 308 Sierra, 31.5% strikeouts, 51.9% ground ball. But, I mean, this is the Dodgers, and it's in Wrigley. So I'm not going there. And then Maeda, it's kind of the same thing, like 10K on DraftKings against the Cubs. He's got a 3.80 ERA, but at 4.87 Sierra, his strikeout rate is average right now. He's walking over 10% of batters. I don't know. This is just, as we're going through these games, this is just feeling like take a shot on some of these lesser known guys like the Trent Thorntons of the world, and maybe a couple of these, are they for real comeback guys for a little bit less money with the upside. And let other people pay these prices for some of these guys that I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, it's a tough price to pay, and this game I wouldn't be shocked if it was like a 6-5 game, 5-4 game. Guys like Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo. Are you going back to these guys, night in and night out when you see the struggles at the plate? I mean, over at The Athletic doing chat every Monday, a lot of questions again today, Greg, or yesterday about Chris Bryant. What I do with Chris Bryant, like obviously you don't want to drop, you don't want to trade him, the value's not there. But from a DFS standpoint, when you see maybe potentially the price drop, the ownership drop, are you willing to take a shot on him? And hey, it's only a matter of time. It's like Chris Bryant, like, is he ever going to get back to just smashing balls? Or you got to wait until the summer days and the wind's blown out in Wrigley? Because that's a thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're doing multiple lineups, I think you got to have at least a little bit of exposure to these guys at these prices, because we know what they're capable of, and the upside is certainly there. But it's tough because you kind of feel like you're taking a shot in the dark right now because they just really haven't shown us anything. Mm-hmm. I'll be curious because like this is Wrigley, so right now we don't have any Vegas lines on this one because we're waiting to see what the wind looks like. So I'll be curious what that rolls out as and if that makes any difference or not. So we'll kind of probably have to wait and see a little bit later on what that looks like.
We have Wade Miley, lefty on the hill. He's $6,800 on DK, $6,300 on FanDuel. One of those guys is obviously just not a fantasy guy. He's a better real-life pitcher, even though he struggles with some home runs. But for the most part, in the course of his career, he's limited the damage by keeping the ball on the ground. He faces a Twins team here tonight, and Michael Pineda 7-1 on DK, 7-7 on FanDuel. I'm willing to take shots on Michael Pineda in certain spots. This isn't one of them for me. He does have some strikeout upside, but over the course of his career, it's home runs have really gotten to him, and the Astros they're feeling it right now. They're hitting home runs left, right, and center. He's smashed a bunch in the Texas series. I keep throwing out guys like Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman forever on FanDuel was like 3.3, 3.4, and he's now 4.3 is a respectable price. But Michael Brantley, Carlos Correa, both of those guys checking at under 4. Any takeaways here on this side for you? Eddie Rosario, small sample size, but he's had a pretty good start to the season against lefties, a 3.33 average, a couple home runs, hit 5, I think, in that Baltimore series on the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the Twins just smashed Baltimore. What did they have? What was it, 11 home runs or something like that? And
I think so, yeah.
That was insane. No, I like the offenses in both of this. I don't like either of these pitchers. Pineda has a 45.6% fly ball rate and a 45.6% hard contact rate so far this season. He's giving up almost 2 home runs per 9. He's had 2 starts with 4 innings or less, and he's faced the Indians, Tigers, and Blue Jays. His only real tough opponent was Philly, and now he's going to face Houston. Like, I love the Houston offense on this one. And then Miley, I have no interest in Miley. He doesn't really strike anybody out. The Twins are a sneaky good offense right now. They have a 364 WOBA and a 209 ISO against left-handed pitching. I think you can stack both sides of this game.
Yeah, that WOBA you mentioned is the sixth best mark in baseball against left-handed pitchers, so I would agree with you there. I think you can get some Twins, and it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'm going to like the over, and I'm going to like both sides on the stacks for sure. 4.9 team implied total for Houston. That's going to rise as we get closer to first pitch. Washington, 5.3 team implied total. They must be playing in Colorado. They are Chad Bettis is the pitcher for the Rockies, a 4.8 team implied total there. Patrick Corbin is going for Washington. Now, Colorado, we all know it's been, a couple years now where they've just destroyed left-handed pitching, and it's been led by Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story. Again, when you're looking at just team WOBA and you dive deep into some of the numbers, even with some slow starts from some of those guys in Arenado and Story, even still, Arenado 491 WOBA this season, for Story at 390. So those are guys that just have success. Are you willing to pay up for them, though, against a guy in Corbin? We were supposed to see Kyle Freeland in this start, a blister on his finger. He hit the IL. It's Chad Bettis. What's your take here? I mean, obviously, Coors Field, we got to expect some runs. You try to find some value. It's tough to find, man.
The one guy who's like a name value today, of course, is pitching in Coors.
Yeah.
But
are you going to go contrarian? Are you going to go GPP there?
As we're going through this slate, like I would almost rather take a shot on Corbin, who's priced down a little bit because he's in Coors, over someone like a Weaver or a Homer Bailey or
right.
Some of those
I agree, because
like,
you're not going to get Carlos Carrasco unless you're playing different slates. Like he's not going to be in that 7 p.m. Eastern on.
Right, exactly. And I mean, the Rockies have been bad. I mean, they have a 27.6% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching, a 158 ISO, a 287 WOBA. I know it's at Coors, and I know they can pop off at any moment when they're at home, but I can see myself rolling out at least a handful of Corbin lineups tomorrow at this price and against that lineup. If it burns me, so be it. It's Coors. I knew what I was getting myself into, but I don't hate it. I really don't.
A lot of people have been asking some strategy about DFS and, been talking about just painting a picture, and sometimes it has to be wild. Like you have to just assume, hey, if I'm not on Colorado bats here, that means paint the picture that potentially they didn't do anything, and you had Patrick Corbin. Everyone's on Colorado bats at home, so you get yourself a good, decent exposure to Patrick Corbin. And yes, you're right. There is some risk there. He could get lit up. The past history is there with some of the Rockies bats, but as you mentioned, some of them have been struggling. I noticed maybe they might get going again now that Dahl and McMahon's back in the lineup, perhaps. But Garrett Hampson is one of those guys that's striking out a lot. Ian Desmond's striking out. He's not doing a whole lot. And Charlie Blackmon hasn't really done a whole lot either. So Patrick Corbin, I think we could all agree he has the highest ceiling, right? Out of all the pitchers we've talked about, besides Carrasco.
Yeah, 100%. His floor is much lower than it would be normally, but definitely the highest ceiling.
Lance Lynn is a guy we like to pick on a lot here on the program. 3.7 team implied total for Texas. He goes into Oakland to face Frankie Montas. 7.6 pricing on DK for him on FanDuel. Much more expensive, 8.4. Lance Lynn checks in at 6.9. You have a feel here. Chris Davis, always a good play. I mean, fly ball hitter going up against a fly ball pitcher. It is in Oakland, though.
Yeah, not the best hitter's park, but I never mind having bats against Lance Lynn. So Davis, Chapman, those guys in play. Morales is usually a cheap guy in the middle of that order. It looks like he's 3.2 on DraftKings, so there's definitely some value there. Montas on the other side is a pitcher I have interest in on this slate. He's got a 386 Sierra, a 0.94 whip, 21.7% strikeout rate. He's forcing almost 60% ground balls right now. The Texas lineup is decent, but they are coming off of a long homestand, and now they're going to be on the road, and it's a pretty bad park shift for them. They only have a 3.7 implied total, so I can get behind some Frankie Montas.
Yeah, and what I noticed from him is he's limiting the hard contact. Last year, he was giving up some hard contact, but this season, you're right about the ground ball rate. I mean, almost 60%. You got to love that when you're targeting some pitchers against some guys who can really just have some pop in their bats, like obviously Joey Gallo. And Asdrubal Cabrera has been decent so far this year, but a good spot for Frankie Montas. I would agree with you there. Let's head over to the Los Angeles Angels. We got Chris Stratton on the hill for the Angels. He checks in as one of the lowest priced pitchers on the board today. He's 5'8" on DK. He's 5'8" on FanDuel. It was looking like Domingo Germán was going to start for the Yankees, but now Jonathan Loizaga is going to start for the Yankees. A shout out to Joey who goes, Loisagna. He does like his little Italian there. I'm like, what are you talking about? But I was more interested in Germán. I love the fact that he was striking guys out. The Angels don't strike out. They make a ton of contact. They don't do anything with the contact besides Mike Trout, but they get a break anyways. They're not facing a lefty. Thoughts, feelings, concerns?
No,
the Yankees
I'm
lineup is pretty watered down, but I can't go Stratton.
No, I mean, Stratton's numbers are a little bit inflated because he's faced Seattle twice and he's got blown up both times, but I honestly don't think it matters. I mean, he's striking out 12.8% of batters and he's walking 15.1% of batters. It's really all you need to know about him. Like, no thanks. On the Yankees side, I'm disappointed that it's not Germán. He was someone who I thought I was going to be targeting pretty heavy, and now it's not. Loizaga, or however you pronounce it. I don't know. I'm guessing at this point he hasn't gone past 4 innings in either of his spot starts, so there's no way you can really give him a serious look because I just don't think he's not going to go deep enough to return value. So as far as this game goes, I think it's the Yankees bats, even though they're pretty watered down. I think they would have a higher implied run total if they had some of their regular guys in there, but obviously Judge being out and Stanton being out and things like that. But I still have interest in them against Stratton, even without some of those bigger names.
Loizaga, 9 strikeouts in 7 innings, decent, but I mean the walks, right? I mean he's walked 5 guys. I don't know how fully he's really stretched out. I can't even still get on some of these Angel bats. It's a bit of a surprise. I think it's because of obviously Mike Trout in the lineup, of course, but I've seen this team have high team implied totals all year long, and a lot of people in the chat and asking about stacks with the Angels. I need to see a little bit more until guys like Ohtani and Upton get back into the lineup. I think you take that team implied total that they always have with a grain of salt, and I think even though they don't strike out a lot, I think even still you can attack, you can get some opposing starting pitchers, and get a good chance at least for a W. That might be the case here with the Yankees. Final game to talk about, we have Eric Swanson, very interesting candidate, of course, for Seattle, 3.7 team implied total, and we have my boy Nick Margevicius. He's a lefty. He's got some great strikeout potential. Like a lot of young pitchers, though, Greg, the walks can be a concern. Seattle has been they've cooled off a little bit. Going into LA over the past weekend helped them get back and, on terms of home runs, get their confidence back up. But they have some guys who've just really destroyed lefties all year. I think this is, from the pitching standpoint, maybe with Swanson, and just to get some Seattle bats, maybe a good opportunity.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, Seattle has a 169 WRC plus, 328 ISO, 415 WOBA. I mean, it's a small sample, but those are ridiculous numbers against left-handed pitching. So I'm definitely on the Seattle offense. And then, Swanson is interesting. He's only got 1 start this season, and it was against Cleveland. So we got to take those numbers with a grain of salt. But in AAA last year, 72 innings pitched, 326 xFIP, 106 WHIP, 26.8% strikeouts. And then he's facing the Padres, and obviously the Padres are better this year, but they're not great. They are striking out 26.7% of the time against right-handed pitching, and they only have a 170 ISO and a 288 WOBA. So I think Swanson's definitely someone we can take a look at tonight as far as pitchers go.
And just underpriced? Well, maybe not. Maybe underpriced is the wrong word for it because not a lot of people are really aware what Swanson can do. But yeah, $6,800 on FanDuel, $77 on DK if you're playing maybe in a late slate. Someone to definitely think about. So there you go. We like Seattle. We like a couple bats in that lineup. We like Oakland. I always like picking on Lance Lynn a little bit. I don't care where it is, where this game is being played for sure. Oakland could be some runs in the Colorado and Washington game, although Greg and I both like the upside and Patrick Corbin. Maybe we can get him with a low ownership pitching in Coors. Going to be some runs in Houston and Minnesota. That's probably where I'm going to go for my home run call, Greg. I think I'm going to go with Alex Bregman against Michael Pineda. I know I've talked up Pineda a lot here on the program, but this is not a good spot for him against Houston. Do you have, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have someone who you think could go yard? Or are we going to Baltimore, get some White Sox potentially in our lineup?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few good spots tonight. I would go with I mean, I guess the White Sox seems kind of lame because we're sitting
It
here
does.
watching them put up like 14 runs right now. But one team that we didn't really talk about earlier that I will say I liked is the Cardinals against Zach Davies. So I'll go with Matt Carpenter as my home run call.
Oh, that's such a good call because Zach Davies, I'm glad you brought him up. We're going to have you back on the show, Greg. Yeah, checks in with an 84% contact rate, gives up a ton of hard contact, 39% last year. Yeah, Zach Davies giving up bombs, man. 8 of them last year in 68 innings. And in 2017, 20 home runs allowed. In 2016, 20 home runs allowed. So that's a good call.
He has a
He
has a 1.19 ERA and a 5.21 SIERA right now. Like
yeah.
people are talking about him as being like the steady starter right now in this Brewers rotation. If he's their steady starter, it's going to be a long year.
Oh, is it ever? I mean, 92% strand rate, right? I mean, a 3.5 walks per 9 and a 5.96 K per 9. So when you're not striking anybody out and you're walking a lot of guys, eventually these stats will even out. Greg, it's been a pleasure, man. Really appreciate the time. Again, a little shout out there. Give Greg a follow. And I didn't really get into it, but you are writing, of course, for LineStar, doing some MLB. Everyone can check out your work there.
Yeah, so I used to be the daily writer. Some things changed in my personal life, so I don't have as much time to dedicate. But I'm covering the weekend slates, and I obviously fill in for folks when they need a day off. So you can follow me on Twitter at GP_Landry, and if you are a LineStar subscriber, you can catch my articles on the weekends. They're posted up on the projections page.
And be a subscriber, guys. The LineStar app is fantastic. Please give us a rate and a review. We appreciate the time. Thanks for hanging out. Good luck. Let the winners be yours. We'll catch you on Wednesday.
You've been listening to the DFS On Deck podcast, brought to you by LineStar. Hit subscribe, tell a friend, and stay tuned for the next episode from fantasy baseball experts Joe Pisapia and Chris Meaney.